The comment section that I want to talk about is probably not filled with the kinds of comments you're expecting. The reason why I was disappointed with these particular comments is because I'm a Christian and I like Tucker Carlson. That's enough to turn some of you away from this video, but I ask you give me a chance to explain. I saw a short from Tucker at this point a couple of weeks ago, which was a snippet from a longer video, and this particular snippet was criticizing atheists for their arguments about why murder is wrong. Let's watch the short so you'll have the proper context around what I want to say.
Why is murder wrong?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, because it is. Because it is. Well, okay, I think it's right. How can you tell me it's wrong? By what authority?
Yeah.
Because you feel that way? That's your authority? Your emotions?
And you would see this. I remember...
So, like, the people you were saying who are atheists, some of them are smart, I assume.
Yeah.
What do they say?
I remember watching, previous guest of yours, actually the man who trained me in ministry, Doug Wilson, debate.
Wonderful man.
Christopher
nice
Hitchens.
Man.
They had that discussion. It was shocking to watch Hitchens say, well, it's common human experience, solidarity with mankind. That's why I think murder is wrong. And of course, Doug says to him, well, if you saw someone being like murdered on the street, you think that's bad, right? Well, why? And he goes into his whole spiel. And he's like, what if it's a pregnant woman and her baby's being murdered? You would just say, well, no, you need to have a medical license for that to kill that person.
What did Christopher say?
He's like, oh, you're being flippant. You wouldn't go down that road.
Tucker is very openly a Christian, and I know that not everyone who watches him or this short will agree with him, but I assumed that the comments would be split, with some agreeing and some disagreeing. Even so, I thought the comments that disagreed would be less insulting and more respectful, simply explaining why they believe that humans see murder as a bad thing. However, it seems that a lot of people misunderstood Tucker and argued exactly what he criticized, saying, quote, because it is. Some people were insulting and disparaging without forming an argument, like these comments. What a stupid conversation. Dumbest take ever. Christopher Hitchens was correct. As an atheist conservative, I agree with a lot of religious values. I absolutely do not get my morals from God or the Bible. It's stupidity like this that drove people like me away from religion. Tucker's usually right. In this video, he's ignorant. The absurdity of religious thinking is astonishing. And this is complete nonsense. People probably don't answer it because it's so absurd. How about this? If Christianity is all about love, why have y'all killed so many people? I'm assuming this last person is talking about the Crusades, but that's a different situation, since those were wars where both sides essentially agreed to murder each other. And of course, we can discuss whether or not they were justified in a different video. Then there are a lot of comments that are condescending but at least have some argument. Take these, for example. WTF is this crazy argument? It's wrong because we have empathy. We're social animals, and you don't want someone to murder you or someone you care about. I would ask where this person believes empathy comes from, but I imagine they'd say we're evolved with it. Although I agree with some of what this person said. I don't want someone to murder me or people I care about. Of course, this statement ignores the fact that 53% of people who are murdered by people that they knew, and 24.8% are murdered by family members. 41.8% of murders happen during arguments. Out of all of those people, it's likely that many of the murderers cared about these people, but they let their emotions get the best of them, so they killed people they actually cared about. Also, there are reasons people kill others who they don't care about. They don't have connections to their victims, so they don't feel anything towards these people. There's also this comment. Ridiculous. Most murderers believe in God. If you understand why a person who believes in God commits murder, you'll understand why a person who does not believe in God does not commit murder. Not to mention those who yell out, God is great before committing the act. I highly doubt that most murderers believe in God, but I was having trouble finding statistics of murderers and belief in God. However, let's assume most of them do believe in God. There is a difference between believing in God and fearing God, or in other words, having a specific religion like Christianity. Just because someone says they believe in God doesn't mean they're telling the truth, nor does it mean that they subscribe to a particular religion. Regarding those who say God is great before they commit murder, this is a phrase typically used by jihadists. Maybe there are Christians who have said this before they committed murder, but as with jihadists, it should be noted that subgroups of religions don't represent the religion as a whole. Also, maybe I'm stupid, but I'm not quite sure what he means by, if you understand why a person who believes in God commits murder, you'll understand why a person who does not believe in God does not commit murder, so I can't really refute that. How about this comment and the commenter's own responses? This is the dumbest thing I've ever heard Tucker say, and he said some dumb things. So you must believe there's a man in the sky to know murder is wrong? What? That's a straw man, but no, you don't have to believe in God, who doesn't reside in the sky, by the way, in order to know that murder is wrong. Most people know or feel this. Tucker wants to know why atheists know murder is wrong. Someone replied to this comment simply asking, so why is murder wrong? And I'm not kidding, this guy does exactly what Tucker was criticizing, assuming he's being serious. You can see it on screen. He said, "Because I think it's wrong. You thinking murder is or isn't wrong doesn't make it right or wrong. Why do you and most others have the sense that murder is wrong? You offered no answer other than your own feelings, which you can't explain." There was another reply saying, "It sounds like this discussion is too deep for you." And the original commenter said, "I don't believe in a magical person in the sky. You do. I think it's too deep for you." I don't know that the person who replied should have written it like that, but I think the original commenter's response is interesting. This person thinks that it's deep thinking to simply only believe in what you can physically see and touch, but believing that there is a God, a spiritual realm, things you can't physically see and touch, isn't deep thinking. There's this comment. It's extremely intellectually dishonest to think that someone can't tell that murder, rape, or violence, etc. is bad if they don't share your religious beliefs. If any reasonable person was sitting with their family and a stranger came up and shot and killed their child, they would know that this is wrong regardless of being an atheist or religious person. How is this even an argument? Again, why do you know that these things are wrong? We can assume the victim of the shooting in this scenario knows that the shooting was wrong, but does the shooter think that? Most people do, but you aren't answering why. You keep saying it's just common sense, but where does this common sense come from? Someone responded, that's not his argument. His argument is, how do you determine what is objectively right and wrong without an objective moral standard? Then the original commenter replied, well, saying that atheists can't have a moral standard without religion, that you have to read in a book somewhere what is right and wrong and can't logically deduce the difference between right and wrong. I'm not an atheist, but these arguments have always been insane. I don't think either of these comments were written in the most clear way, but that's besides the point. Logic has nothing to do with determining right and wrong. That's why these people keep saying that they just know or feel that things like murder are wrong. You can logically determine what is or isn't beneficial to you personally, but that doesn't equate to being right or moral. There were other more solid or reasonable comments, many that made arguments, but they seem to have missed what Tucker was saying. There's this one. Atheist here. Killing people's wrong. Also, I have no problem with Christianity. Whatever it takes to make people be nice. This comment doesn't make an argument, simply says that murder is wrong. Again, though, why is it wrong? Also, they say that they want to make people be nice, which implies that people aren't always naturally nice. If that's what they're saying, I think they're right about that, but I have to ask why they consider murder not nice. If we're all just animals alive by accident with no purpose or afterlife, why would it matter if I murder someone? There's 8 billion others. I don't want to put words in their mouth, so that's all I'll say about that comment. Here's another one. Murder is wrong because it violates the autonomy of others. There's a reason why the law is like 95% property rights and your body is your property. So why is the autonomy of others so valuable or important? I admit I'm assuming this, but I'm guessing that this person thinks that humans are animals. Why is it that the autonomy of humans matters to other humans when other animals don't seem to care about autonomy? What makes people different? Another comment reads, on this particular subject, negative actions have negative outcomes, and if one of my primary goals is living in peace, this particular action not only affects my peace, but the peace of others around me. So in order to have a peaceful life, I must make sure others around me can have a peaceful, fulfilling life, while taking action to minimize the suffering around me, because misery creates misery. It is very contagious when others are living in suffering than see you living in a golden castle. The ones that suffer will come and destroy your peace if you don't help them climb out of it. So who or what determines a negative action? This person is speaking about themselves and their desires for life. They want to live peacefully, as most people do, so they believe that any action that destroys peace is negative. I think they're saying that murder is wrong since it disrupts the peace in others' lives, but what if someone doesn't care about peace? Would murder still be wrong? I think most people would say yes, but Tucker asks why. It can't be based on what we personally feel or think, because there are some people that think and feel differently. Here's another comment. It's called a moral compass. Some people don't need religion to keep them in line. We have a soul. Someone then responded with this. How do we determine whose moral compass is better than others? When the Aztecs were engaging in mass ritualistic human sacrifice, was their moral compass in tune or out of tune? Why? This is a great example. Not everyone at all points in time believes that murder is wrong. The Aztecs thought human sacrifice would please their god, but not all of those sacrificed wanted to be an offering, therefore they were murdered. We look at that and say that human sacrifice is wrong, but why? Why is it wrong to sacrifice humans but not animals? Also, where does the moral compass and soul come from? Why do you feel that murder is wrong? Saying because you have a moral compass is again what Tucker is criticizing. You're saying murder is wrong because I feel that it is. Why do you feel that way? Not everyone has the same natural moral compass, so it can't simply be human nature to look down on murder. This next comment was a reply to a comment that talks about things I've already addressed. Morals are invented rules based on optimal conduct of society. If everyone were murdering each other all the time, it would be impossible and horrible for everyone. Murdering for food isn't as bad as long as you don't hurt your own species. No need whatsoever for God to tell us what is good or wrong. We're perfectly capable of determining that by listening and agreeing on certain things. This is such a non-argument for God. Morals are not based on optimal conduct. It would be beneficial for the poor or people who can't find the resources they need to survive to murder people and take their things, or for a person to murder someone who makes them angry. But there's something wrong about that, taking another person's life. Most of us know it's wrong, but why do we just know? And why is it so horrible to murder people? If the world is an accident, we have no purpose, no afterlife. Who cares if someone dies? Isn't their life meaningless anyway? Besides, Western civilization is built on the morals given in the Bible. It's illegal to murder people, which is partially why people tend not to do it, but it's illegal because of Christianity and the morals in the Bible. And this is the last comment that I'll address before I make my final cohesive argument. The issue with Tucker's argument is that if you ask Tucker why he thinks murder is wrong, he would say, because God said so. You would then follow this up by asking him how he knows God said that, and he would say something about the Bible being the Word of God. You would follow this up by asking how he knows the Bible is the Word of God, and he would end up with the same, because it is, or it was revealed in the Bible circular logic that they are mocking atheists for having. It is a good enough argument to say that we hold the ability to deploy the human conscious experience in the highest regard, and we hold the consent of that conscious individual, or individual with the ability to deploy consciousness, i.e. babies in the womb at 24 weeks, in high regard as well. Murder removes both of those. This first paragraph is a straw man. We don't know that Tucker would say that. This person is assuming what he'd say. I think this is a valid question, though. How do you know that the Bible is the Word of God? I might make a video about this later because I think it is important to talk about. The second paragraph then gives the commenter's reasoning for murder being wrong. We value human consciousness and consent. I think it's interesting that this person specifies human consciousness. Are animals different? Why? Aren't we animals too? Why is consciousness valuable anyway? Like I already asked, if we're an accident and we have no purpose, who cares if someone is murdered? In the short, Tucker doesn't actually make an argument, he's just calling out the arguments he hears atheists use. Of course, this is a short and it is taken out of context, but Tucker doesn't make an argument in the full video either, really because this conversation was a side tangent, so I'll make an argument instead. I think it's safe to assume that the vast majority of people instinctively know or feel that murder, which is considered to be unlawful killing, is wrong. There are logical reasons for not murdering, but there's a feeling that most of us have that isn't necessarily logical. Maybe you call it soul, moral compass, or empathy. But where does that come from? I think it comes from God. Because of sin, though, not everyone has this feeling. Some people were saying that we don't need a book or God to tell us that murder is wrong, but I don't think this is the case. Like I said, there are some people who don't feel that murder is wrong, so they would need to be explicitly told that they shouldn't do it. Not just that, but what happens in places where life is difficult? Take South Sudan, for example. The war-torn country has a poverty rate of 96.6% and a homicide rate of 14.05 per 100,000 people. Or how about Jamaica, with a poverty rate of 13.9% and a murder rate of 49.3 per 100,000 people? There are different factors that cause people to murder, but poverty and murder seem to be closely linked. My point is that it's easy to condemn murder or not have a reason to murder someone when life is comfortable. But when resources are difficult to come by or when you're in danger, I think a lot of us would commit murder or at least consider it, even if we felt it was wrong, because ultimately we're selfish. We put ourselves and those we care about first. Now, this feeling we keep talking about has to come from somewhere, because if right and wrong are determined by each person individually, then what someone calls right, another calls wrong. So there does have to be some authority other than our emotions or thoughts that tells us that murder is wrong. There also seems to be a difference between humans and animals. We don't think twice about animals killing each other, even animals of the same species. And most people have no issue killing animals for food. Animals can kill each other, but for some reason humans killing each other is depraved. Animals themselves don't have a problem killing their own kind. Why is this? Why is killing viewed differently for humans? Murder may hurt our survival based on morality and laws, but why does that matter if all of this is an accident? Why do we feel that murder is wrong? Why does God give us that feeling, or want us to know that murder is wrong? That's because we're made in God's image. That's what separates us from animals. That's why it's wrong for us to kill each other. We share attributes of God that His other creations don't. We're special. We have souls. We aren't an accident. We have a purpose. We have an afterlife. We have a chance for redemption, to be free from sin and all the evils that have infected the world. Thank you so much for watching. What do you think about my arguments? Is there something that was unclear or another point I should have brought up? If you want to help me make more videos, like and subscribe, but if nothing else, I hope I gave you something to think about.